Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Wednesday, August 6th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 147 is Hogwarts Legacy. As you could maybe tell from some of the other games on my rankings, I very much love the world of Harry Potter. Well, this is as far as that love goes when it comes to video games. That's right, Hogwarts Legacy is the highest ranked Harry Potter game on the list, and now I get to address the elephant in the room. Harry Potter is great. I love the world. I love the books. I finally started reading them shortly after the fourth book came out when I was in the third grade. Instantaneously, I fell in love with those books. I went to midnight release parties for the fifth and seventh books and managed to get the sixth book 3 days before it actually released. I knew Snape kills Dumbledore before the book came out. It's become very difficult for me to untangle those feelings since then. I love the first 3 movies, really like the 4th and 5th, do not like the 6th, and tolerate the 7th and 8th. I've been to both Wizarding World parks at Universal Studios in Orlando and have a matching wand set of Fred and George Weasley with my twin brother. I tried to create a virtual choir for the Ravenclaw subreddit. I also really hate J.K. Rowling. As far as I can tell, her success with Harry Potter was pretty much luck from a writing perspective, and she's not a good author outside that lightning in a bottle. And as for who she is as a person, she's just absolutely vile. I am not here to support the most vocal TERF in the world. It's actually ironic because if anything, I think she fails to fundamentally understand what made Harry Potter successful as a character and Hogwarts such an endearing setting. Many children and young adults can relate to Harry's struggle of having to live a second life while at home and keep up appearances of being someone they're not. Many children and young adults can and do fantasize about being able to just go away to some fantastical, faraway place where they can be their true selves amongst hundreds of people like them. I have a lot of cognitive dissonance with this property now. With that in mind, I do love the setting specifically of Hogwarts. Magic School is my favorite fictional setting in any medium, and I don't just mean Harry Potter. Little Witch Academia is a great anime and everyone should watch it. I've played Magic the Gathering for over 20 years and my favorite set of all time is Strixhaven. It's a magic school that uses magic to teach normal subjects. That's awesome! In Marvel Comics, Strange Academy is a series written by Scotty Young, my favorite creator in all of comics, about teenagers in a magic school hidden in the middle of New Orleans, created by my favorite comic book character, Doctor Strange, with an amazing, diverse cast. All of this is to say, there's a lot more about magic school stuff and how much I like it than just Harry Potter. And because of my love for the entire breadth of the trope, I desperately wish this game hadn't leaned on the intellectual property to help sell it. I think Hogwarts Legacy would have been a much better game had it not been set in the Wizarding World. And that's not just because the author is a terrible person. I went into Hogwarts Legacy not knowing a whole lot about the story. I knew you played as a new student well in the past before most of the characters in the Harry Potter storyline are born. I say most because in 1890, when the game is set, Albus Dumbledore is 2 years old, so he's not exactly the Grand Wizard we later know him as. I knew there would be some big-time plot, save the Wizarding World type stuff, but I assumed there was going to be more magic school slice of life stuff too. I was wrong. That's the first thing for why I think they should have just made their own world. If you're not really getting to experience all of the detail, why bother putting in all the work to make things line up? And they did put in the work. Once you get to school, you can run around and explore the grounds, along with the surrounding area in Scotland. Admittedly, there's some inconsistencies that do bother me, but that's mostly because I'm so used to the visuals from the film sets, they don't have to match one-to-one, but it's hard to picture the Grand Staircase being different than the films. A lot of the characters are just references to known characters generations later, but they feel pretty shoehorned. Yes, Phineas Nigellus Black is established to exist in the lore because of the Black family tapestry, but I feel like it would have been mentioned if he were a former headmaster of Hogwarts. Maybe I just need to reread Order of the Phoenix, but I do think that would have stuck out of my memory. I also don't know a lot about the Weasley family tree, but I feel like making the deputy headmistress a Weasley was just a way to communicate to players that she's a foil to Headmaster Black, and that one clearly disdains muggles and the other is supportive. But I'm getting a little lost in the sauce here, I think, and ultimately, those details don't actually matter that much. I just still wish I could have explored an entirely new world without having to risk making comparisons to established ideas in my head and creating disappointment. In Hogwarts Legacy, you create your own character with an admittedly really in-depth character creator. As a nice touch and a nice middle finger to J.K. Rowling herself, you can actually pick witch or wizard regardless of anything else in your appearance or sound or anything. And while we're at it, it would have been nice to have a more non-binary option, but I do understand that the school just isn't set up that way, like physically. Another reason this could have been a new property, for the record. Anyways, you're starting school as a 5th-year student, but you're brand new to magic. One of the professors has been working with you throughout the summer to help you get up to speed, as you're expected to, by the end of the year, do everything all of your classmates can do. However, things immediately get off on the wrong foot as you're joined by a colleague of the professor's late wife, and you learn why she died. Some goblins sent a dragon after her. It turns out she had been studying ancient magic, and a goblin extremist named Ranrock has been chasing after her. Conveniently enough, your character can see traces of this ancient magic. After getting shot out of the sky in what is probably the biggest plus of basing everything on the Harry Potter IP, you see Threstrals appear pulling the carriage, informing people in the know that yes, that dude definitely died. For those unaware, you can only see a Threstral if you've seen someone die. That scene is awesome. None of the other cinematics live up to that bar throughout the entire rest of the game, but that scene rocks. It turns out the item that you found is a port key and brings you to one of the oldest vaults in Gringotts, the massive wizarding bank. The focus of the story here involves your character's similarities to a handful of wizards long ago. Percival Rackham was an extremely gifted wizard who started at Hogwarts as a 5th year and could see and utilize ancient magic. He becomes an influential professor and leader of basically the magic Illuminati at Hogwarts. Later in his life, he discovers an extremely gifted young witch who starts Hogwarts as a 5th year. She can see and utilize ancient magic. You are an extremely gifted young witch. Do you see where I'm going with this? Throughout the game, you follow in much the same footsteps of your predecessors, only this time, you're fixing all of their mistakes. While also being headhunted by some power-hungry evil people, their evil in the game doesn't even try to make them redeemable. To be honest, the main plot is extremely predictable and very boring. Rackham's students got a taste of real power, and it got to her head, so she tried to play God and rewrite the rules of the universe. That got shut down, and they sealed away the power she created so that nobody else could ever use it. In the present, at least for the game, Ranrock has discovered this power and is trying to access it for himself. Oh no! You've got to stop him and destroy the power for good. The game's called Hogwarts Legacy because the power was all consolidated and hidden in the areas surrounding Hogwarts. It definitely wasn't a budget issue or a creative hurdle that could have been solved by being an original property. Nope, not one bit. I'm definitely not going to leave it alone like an itchy scab I can't stop scratching. Nope, not one bit. So the story itself is mediocre, and the setting leans excessively on controversial IP. What does the game do well? For starters, the supporting cast is all phenomenal. Well, outside Black and Weasley just being thrown in there. The characters are fine, they could just been someone else. While you don't do as much slice-of-life school stuff as I had hoped, you do get some, albeit with some higher stakes than you'd normally think. There's some throwaway background characters that have their own little quirks you'll pick up on, but there's a few major supporting characters throughout. First is your professors. They're all charming and very cool people, both inside and outside of the classroom. At first, it's fairly surface level stuff, just cool teachers being cool, but as the game goes on, you learn more and more about them, and they all have pretty compelling backstories, especially your defense against the dark arts professor, Dina Hackett, who on the surface is an extremely old woman teaching in the twilight of her years off the back of a long career basically at Wizard CIA. Most of that's true, except we learn she's not actually that old, but lost much of her life due to an incident at the aforementioned Wizard CIA. I think she's a fascinating character, and I love listening to everything she says. Even the more side character professors like Chiyo Kagawa, who teaches flying, have excellent stories behind them, like how she was a shoo-in for one of the top Quidditch teams in Japan, but willingly gave it all up after her friend slipped basically in performance-enhancing drugs into her tea before the audition. These characters don't just exist in their own little bubble, either. Professor Onai teaches divination and recently moved to Hogwarts to take up the position from Uganda, along with her daughter, Natsai. Natsai is one of your classmates and a good friend for your character, going on many adventures together throughout the surrounding areas of the school, both important to the main story and for her own side story. A lot of her struggles stem from a strenuous relationship with her mother, who even Natsai admits wants what's best for her, but they don't exactly see eye to eye on what that means. Natsai's father was an animagus, meaning he could shapeshift into an animal, and she was with him when some poachers didn't realize he was a person, and then shot and killed him. Her story, while tragic, has a lot of layers to it and is extremely well written. Your other main classmates have their own intricacies and subplots that are quite good, though none are quite as interesting in Natsai's, in my opinion. However, if you do want to be a dark wizard, as that is an option in this game, one character's search for power to save his dying sister does lead you down that path, so you can learn the unforgivable curses from him, and that's pretty cool. I've been doing a lot of talking about world building and plots and everything else, but how do you actually play this game? As you can imagine, the vast majority of the gameplay revolves around spellcasting. You have a quick cast selection of up to 4 spells, though as you level up you can unlock more rows so you can swap between them a little easier. Many of your spells are combat oriented, but far from all of them. The game is actually loaded with puzzles, using spells like Lumos to light up dark areas, like some dungeons, or solving these cool butterfly puzzles. Light up the mirror that's missing a little butterfly, and it shows you a hint about where to find it. When you figure out where that is, use Lumos again, and the butterfly will follow your wand as you guide it back to the mirror, giving you a field guide page. Throughout the game, basically your pause menu is a magical book called a field guide. In addition to acting as a flavorful way to access various menus, you can collect pages to fill it. A lot of the pages are just generic little doodads to collect that fill a meter of how much stuff you've collected for the sake of it, but many others give little lore and setting info, especially throughout Hogwarts. Pressing the R key casts Revelio, a spell that, as the name implies, reveals things. This can be those field guide pages, but it also lets you see enemies through walls, hidden chests, and other items you can interact with. Other ways you can find pages is seeing them flying around and using Accio to bring them to you, or there's little dragon statues you can light on fire with Incendio, or statues that look weirdly like Christopher Columbus to me, though I suspect it's just a reference for something I'm overlooking, that you can cast Leviosa at to lift the little orb he's holding. Collecting all of this goes beyond just for the sake of collecting, however, as it's one of several ways you unlock more cosmetics. In this game, there's equipment you'll find in chests, and they have stats and stuff, but it's pretty linear upgrades. but you can change the appearance of all of your gear to whatever you like across all of the appearances that you've unlocked. It's not exactly important, but there are admittedly a lot of options out there, and I'm glad they did it. Some more active puzzle solving includes Merlin Trials, which requires you to activate different pedestals within a time limit, and so many treasure vaults. Like, just an absolutely insane amount of treasure vaults. Like, a disappointingly low amount of interesting treasure spread across absolutely way too many treasure vaults. While it's great there's all these spellcasting options for puzzles, where the spellcasting really shines is the combat itself. Historically, Harry Potter games have great puzzles and mediocre combat. Hogwarts Legacy has a mixed bag, including some absolutely delightful puzzles, and stellar combat. Left-click does your basic attack, building up combos, but many enemies have different color shields corresponding to a variety of combat spells. If someone has a purple shield, cast a purple spell at them, and it breaks the shield, allowing you to really put on the hurt. Key to chaining your combos is your own shields. Pressing Q turns on your shield, and doing it just before getting hit, then holding it casts Stupefy as a counterattack, breaking most shields in the process. Not every enemy has these shields, of course. There's a lot of non-spellcasting enemies that wouldn't have them, but they have their own wrinkles as well. You can cast Flipendo at a troll who tried to hit you with their big mace, and it flips it up into their head and they get stunned and take a bunch of damage. There are these big frog things that are really ugly and kind of weird, but they try to attack you with their tongue, and if you cast Leviosa when they do that, then it dangles them in the air, and you cast a big cutting spell that will slice it off and instantly kill them. So all of this nuance makes for a lot of really interesting combat situations. As your character levels up, you gain talent points to spend on things, often combat related, though some can be more utility oriented or stealth bonuses. Upgrading your spells and combat prowess feels great, and by the end of the game, you're casting at a proficiency way higher than any 5th year should be expected. And that's without getting into your secret talent. Being able to access ancient magic is like a cheat code, launching items at enemies and building up a meter down by your health, that when a segment is full, you can cast a spectacular ancient magic spell and one-shot most enemies. Boss fights in the game admittedly aren't that amazing, but that's mostly because they're typically stronger, higher HP versions of some other regular enemy. I'm giving it a pass though, because fighting regular enemies is already so much fun. Hogwarts Legacy is a really well-designed game with loads of bonus content that you can really sink your teeth into. The game is filled with subplots and side quests that you can complete for bonuses throughout, like the totally well-kept secret dueling club that Professor Hecat doesn't quietly approve of at all, which then kind of graduates into the Dark Wizard combat trails you can find out in the world. Or the groundskeeper's fear of demiguises, causing someone to put little statues of them everywhere for you to collect, often through loads of locked doors. Or flying! Because Headmaster Black sucks and hates his students, there's no Quidditch this year. But that doesn't stop you from flying around. The flight controls are admittedly a bit questionable, but once you get used to them, it's as fun as ever. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Putting Star Fox into a game is guaranteed to make it a better game. Get on that, everybody. Flying challenges are largely just time trial races, but there's some exploration stuff you can do too, popping balloons or finding landing pads. And I haven't even gotten into the Room of Requirement. Throughout the game, there's a good number of usable items you have access to, but you have to get them. The easiest way to do that is by farming the items through the Room of Requirement, which serves as a safe space for you to practice your wand work with your heavier school workload and, world-saving duties. At least they say it's for wand work. You're really just there to grow your plants and make potions. Oh, and laying the groundwork for Newt Scamander to become the greatest magical beast conservationist of all time. Throughout the Wizarding World, there are tons of animals for you to find, from hippogriffs to nibblers, and you can get to rescue them from poachers throughout the world and tuck them away in the Room of Requirement. There's a whole breeding minigame to this too, if you care about that, but I didn't get into it much. I just like turning it into a petting zoo. There's so much to do in this game, and if you do like Harry Potter and its expanded universe, you'll love the attention to detail. Or, like me, you'll pretty much realize you already knew most of this and wish you got to see something new for once. Regardless, the excellent gameplay itself and memorable subplots with your supporting cast, complete with wonderful voice acting and sound design, make it stand out amongst a vast sea of titles in an endless onslaught of merchandising, since people can't have original ideas anymore. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 146th favorite game, where I find original ideas, but still in a gigantic gaming franchise.